Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sophia. I organize Spectrum events for you, bringing the community together through learning at Spectrum. For those of you who are new to Spectrum, aside from organizing events, we offer curated workspaces for the community experience, bringing members together and providing the connections to expand businesses. So for today's webinar, joining us to talk about investing in Vietnam, fintech opportunities in a dynamic emerging economies are Swarup Shah, CEO of Validus Vietnam. Swarup has over 20 years in global banking in emerging and merchant markets. His experience covers consumer lending, sales, credit underwriting, risk management, and credit operations. Swarup has played a key role in taking Validus from a fintech startup to Singapore's largest SME financing platform in just a few years. His views, as he continues to play an instrumental role in helping to pivot Validus in Vietnam and driving financial inclusion for the many unbanked and underbanked SMEs, will provide a great perspective on the panel. Next, I have Trung Huang, partner with Vina Capital Ventures. Trung has more than 25 years experience in business consultancy, corporate operations, and venture capital across the region in Southeast Asia and Silicon Valley. So he has served on multiple boards to technology startups that have successfully expanded across the region and have achieved successful local IPOs. His perspective from a $100 million USD Vietnam-focused venture capital platform focused on investing in and building world-class technology companies and incorporating them into a full digital ecosystem adds great depth to the discussion today. So in partnership with Healthcare FinTech Alliance, our moderator for today is Jean Fu, Associate Director, FinTech Academy. She is a 2020 nominee of Singapore's President-presented Skills Future Fellowship, which honors individuals as masters of skills and mentors of talent. Jean specializes in restructuring and training of banking, finance, and fintech talents, and currently works with financial institutions on these areas. Before I hand it over to you, Jean, audience, if you have any questions, please post them onto the platform here. Without further ado, Jean, over to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Sophia, and definitely thank you very much to Spectrum for hosting today's webinar. Welcome, everybody. We are so excited today to be speaking with two very seasoned professionals in the space of fintech and investment, as well as financial inclusion in Vietnam. But as we all know from the way that Sophia has elegantly introduced, they are also very well versed in the fintech space across ASEAN. So we have some interesting topics to discuss today. And let's start off by discussing how is the investment and the fintech scene in Vietnam different from the rest of ASEAN? Would you be able to share a little bit on how Vietnam approaches financial inclusion differently? And are there different kinds of challenges you would find in Vietnam? Saurabh or Trung, either one of you, please go ahead.
Okay, Anjung, if you can start off.
Okay, so let me take the order. Thank you very much, and I'm very honored to join the discussion today. Let's just dive directly into the questions. Vietnam has about 100 million population with the high internet penetration and also the mobile penetration in Vietnam. For the current statistic, there's more than 140 mobile subscribers in Vietnam, but I think we can discount it into 70 in the sense that maybe one people would have two numbers and so. But unfortunately, Vietnam only have less than 30% of the population have bank account. So in terms of financial inclusion, Vietnam has a long way ahead to go. At the moment, from my observation, the government tries really hard in order to achieve these missions. And Prime Minister had just agreed on the plan from now to 2025 and 2030 for Vietnam. So he wants by 2025, Vietnam will have at least 50% of the population to have bank account, and up to 80% by 2030. But at the moment, Vietnam approaches, I think that there are two important initiatives at the moment. First, they issue more than 27 e-wallet licenses in Vietnam at the moment. E-wallet, to tackle the underbanked and unbanked population. So to help people to have the basic payment and financial services. The another initiative is launch the mobile money, which is we have to convert, as I said, 70 million population into the bank account. Ideally, people can use their mobile number as a wallet or a sub-bank account for the transaction, so they can use it for micro transaction at the moment. So that is the two key initiatives at the moment. On the longer run, the government also wants to implement more robust, more high-tech system in terms of eKYC. They also do the other initiatives in terms of SME lending. They also issue new regulation for P2B lending, and also including other credit scoring analysis, POS, InsurTech, retail, investments. So all of the other initiatives will come. But at the moment, we are waiting for the sandbox policy and the legal framework to help us to execute.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, I'll just take off from where Anshung has left. I'll just give you a brief in terms of some addition to the numbers and some background what Anshung was talking about. If you look at Vietnam as an economy, both Vietnam economy and the financial sector within this country are both in the process of transformation. So if you look at how financial transactions were happening 5 years back vis-a-vis what's happening today, that's a huge difference. We're talking about financial inclusion. Let's look at the potential that a fintech would have in Vietnam. With a few numbers which Anshung was saying, I'll just add on to that. If you look at the cashless transaction per capita is only 4.1, which is pretty low. If you look at the electronic payment acceptance rate, whether it is a peer-to-peer, whether it is peer-to-business, whether it is business-to-business, is almost half as compared to the average of what's there in the APAC region. In terms of challenges and very inherent to specifically to Vietnam, given the stage of the development for the fintech segment is, you have low financial literacy. Your current policies and your regulatory framework are still, WIP, or work in progress. So, all these things will add into making sure that it might take still a slightly longer time, but there is a huge potential in the market. If you look at fintech as a segment, it's a low adoption of fintech solution due to cashless payment habits in this country, which is basically by nature an average Vietnamese would rather dole out his cash than using anything which is cashless, and that thing has started changing in the last couple of years, if you will, and that gives a huge potential for payment wallets like what Anshung was saying, as we go along. He touched upon topic of a peer-to-peer SME lending platform, which is another vertical under the fintech. If you look at that segment, there is close to 21 billion USD worth of unmet financing gap, which is existing in the market as of today, and that's huge. That contributes almost 20% of the SME revenue as a percent of the GDP. So that's huge. In Vietnam, almost 60% of the SMEs are unable to get loans from the banks, given they do not have any financial records, any credit history, they do not have any collaterals. So, to have these kind of businesses to get into the financial sector, that's going to be a huge opportunity, and that's a long way to go for Vietnam. In terms of opportunity, I think we are just beginning, to enter that fintech revolution.
Yeah. So basically, the runway for fintech opportunities is really, really long for Vietnam, and I guess that's something that's really attractive to a lot of potential investors. Now, you've covered, you've spoken a lot about financial inclusion in terms of transactions, in the verticals of payments, remittance, and lending, and we're also wondering, are there other kinds of fintech verticals that would also, be potentially attractive? For example, whether it's digital asset management, robo trading, crowdfunding, electronic invoicing, or even personal finance apps. So something that we talked about, having stronger personal financial literacy in Vietnam. So aside to the common fintech verticals, do you foresee other verticals that would potentially take off well in Vietnam as well?
If you ask me, I think this is the evolution of fintech is going to be in stages. We have started with payments, as Anshung has rightly said. We are moving to lending, but the way the adoption that is picking up by the newer generation, it's a matter of time where you have robo advisories coming in. You might have AI fintechs coming in. You might have robo trading that is coming in. So I think it's a matter of time where you start seeing these kind of startups really springing up very, very fast as we go along. And I think a lot will depend on the sandbox which is proposed to come by Q1 in Vietnam.
Right.
I think that's I agree with Swarup that it's come with the development of the country. For now, it's just starting, so you see lots of influx of remittance from overseas, or you lack up the banking system, so that's why they will develop all of the solution around payment and remittance and so. But for the robo investment, definitely it's already there. We already have a couple of investment out here in Vietnam looking into that. Also, the online online brokerage. It's not a B2B lending platform, online brokerage. So the auto advisor can use your consumption behavior or also financial status and give you the advisor on the specific requirement. So all of these things, I think it will slowly develop. But there's one thing I want to highlight is Vietnam government had just officially approved on eKYC. That will help this process to be implemented faster, because with e-process, people will be on board quicker and more secure and more sufficient. With more people on the system, all of the ecosystem will be developed and will be applied very fast.
So in terms of timeline or timing, how fast do you think, fintech will actually, I won't say mature, but they come in different stages. But when do you see like the next upcoming stage of so-called maturity or takeoff for some of these other verticals that are happening? Because now it seems like it is really, starting to take off, and at a later stage where it's more sophisticated and the infrastructure is in place. When will that time kind of arrive? Do we have some kind of a crystal ball in terms of that?
I don't think we have to look into the crystal ball to tell this. Before COVID, people in Vietnam very much based on cash transaction. But during the COVID time, as of now, there's so many type of transactions have been conducted online. It's from the healthcare industry to e-commerce to education and everything. That's only one of the aspect of the fintech. But if you look into the whole supply chain, you see this is happening. All of the traditional bank like VTB Bank, they only implement the self-service kiosks. So people don't have to queue up for services. You don't need any clerk at the counter to serve anybody. You can just go directly there, and all you have to do is just show your face or use your biometric to do the transaction. So even though for the traditional, they will change. So I would say that if I have to have any prediction, I think it will change very fast for Vietnam, especially with the mobile money, especially with the eKYC, and also with the trend of e-commerce adoption in Vietnam at the moment.
I think I second that point, and just a couple of points here. That if you look at Vietnamese economy, Vietnamese population, if you will, it's a very young population, right? The ability of the younger population to adapt to technology is very fast.
Yes.
And if you will, if you see in the COVID situation, the incremental business that e-commerce companies have done is enormous. And this goes to show that there is a more likelihood of people willing to do online, willing to do things, transactions online as compared to a face-to-face or a brick and mortar businesses where you have to go and visit those shops. Two, I think as the economy and as the younger population, your internet penetration is extremely high in this country. And that, along with the younger generation, I think it's a huge potential for all these businesses to actually start springing up pretty soon.
So in keeping this in mind, where we have the potential speed of fintech adoption, as well as some kind of various sandboxes that we are waiting, what kind of advice can you give to investors who are interested in actually, capturing this opportunity of fintech in Vietnam? And are there different kinds of investment strategies or trends and advice you would want to share with them, specifically, for fintech in Vietnam?
Okay, before Anchung is it's probably his forte, but just a few points from my side in terms of investment. If you're looking for Vietnam as a destination, if you look at the current regulation or the current direction that we are getting from the governmental agencies, there is a strong government support which is pushing for and focus on the proposed sandbox is one of the steps towards that. So I think we are on the verge of seeing opening up of the fintech segment as we go along. Just to put in context, as I told you earlier, it's a young population. It's a high mobile and e-wallet market that is springing up in Vietnam, and I think all these ingredients are a perfect ground for evolution of this segment. And a few numbers here and there. It's Vietnam is second in terms of the ASEAN in terms of funding that has happened, which is almost 36%, just behind Singapore. So that's always been a very attractive and lucrative destination for the investors as they're looking for it. And it is projected that close to 9 billion worth of investment is expected, in Vietnam, which is probably the fourth largest in ASEAN. So I think this is the destination. This is the place where people would be looking for in terms of investment.
Yeah, I just want to add to that the current, the traditional banking industry, financial solutions in Vietnam is quite mature, and it's very expensive. So fintechs will be an area where investors should look into first for the foreign ownership in Vietnam. This is unlimited. Either investor can start a new business or can just buy in and can own 100% of the business easily. Second one, that's an area, as was Swarup said, we can touch into all of the vertical industry, and there will be the easy description. It can be from insurance perspective, it can be from healthcare industry, or it can be from education. So fintech, overall, what we see it as a horizontal industry where we have many touch points, which we think will be a very attractive area of investment for Vietnam going forward.
Okay. Now, thank you so much for sharing about the general trends and that's happening in Vietnam with regards to investing and the fintech landscape. So, when it comes to actually the utility of fintech and the application of it, I would just like to kind of maybe ask some specific questions as a case study. So, for Validus, we know that you are throughout ASEAN. You are not only in Vietnam. You are actually also in Singapore and other parts. So, where, as Trung had mentioned before, some of the financing infrastructure is not that matured yet. So when it comes to, credit scoring or data authentication, how does Validus manage that? Because you are providing financing to companies, And without, the infrastructure of traditional or, credible credit scoring, how do you actually qualify your borrowers to ensure that, the financing gets paid back and the loans are returned?
Sure. See, Validus, the business model is highly data centric, and we rely on sophisticated fraud and risk algo, which is built and developed in-house by a data science team in Singapore, which processes customer data acquired either directly or through our partnership. The business model is designed to enable a fairly matured and a differentiated credit assessment engine for our SMEs. We employ non-traditional sources to augment and increase our understanding of the SMEs. This ensures we are able to gauge the SMEs' creditworthiness, using business-related information. We look at not only the financial data, we look at any alternate source of data that we can get in. And as an SME's assets is not necessarily be reflecting all the details in documents that they provide. Right, so we use innovative ways to use this information to mitigate credit risk for our SMEs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, so John, Vina Capital is an investor of Validus, and we know that Vina Capital looks at various fintech companies and really invests in innovative technology. So, I was just wondering, what is it in Validus that really attracted Vina Capital to capture the opportunity? And in terms of other kinds of technology or emerging technologies such as AI, how do you foresee that possibly coming into play, and improving the rate of returns for investments?
Sure. Beside the very solid team of Validus, we look into the product also at the market. So the team is very strong and the market is big. But then also the product, we see that's very defensible market, as Squarup has said. For the development country like Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, we don't really have the credit scoring. But Validus has implemented a very robust algorithm, which they collect data from not only developing country, but also from developed countries. So the idea is they identify the risks. So which is the most risky area and the most risky profile. So they analyze it. On the other platform, when we they look into the non-risk profile, but Validus is different. So we identify the risk and we rank them from 1 to 10. So from 1 to 3 normally is non-risk, and the market will be served by bank. But from 4 to 10, and it'll be very difficult for the SME entrepreneur to get funding. And Validus have the algorithm to compare between developed and underdeveloped or developing. And as we come out with more than 1,000 data points in order to assess the risk, not only the personal profile, but also the behavior, and then also the algorithm to calculate all of the zero inside the financial report. So they come out with a very sophisticated to ensure that we have the proper advice for the investor. At the same time, we also can predict the payment behavior of the borrower. So the platform is robust. So we think that with our partnership, we can open door for Validus to come to Vietnam, because we can connect to the partners. At the same time, they are strong in Singapore, where Vertex can help them into other business. And their strategies go in the region is the same. The heads are the holding company in Singapore, but then at the country level, they partner with only prestigious partners, which can help them to tap into the economy, and at the same time can collect data to analyze its fraud. Validus come out with the pre-approval process before the entrepreneur or the SME come to Validus. So that's the nice thing. So we spend time with the company. We assess the system. We look into all of aspects, and we think this is great company. So we're very happy with the partnership so far.
So sorry, I'm also curious here, so Validus is really relying, you are a data-driven kind of a company in sense when it comes to, using data to really quantify and help with decision making. Now, do you foresee, do you think, what kind of value do you think would come out being a big data company ultimately, where you're holding all this data, and at some point, do you foresee that Validus would also be leveraging on AI, as a lot of fintech companies are slowly integrating with different kinds of technologies to kind of take your capacity forward?
Oh,
Sure.
yeah. Oh, okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, on this AI, if you're asking me, right, there's an increasing demand for process automation among all financial organizations, which is driving the market, right? And process automation is one of the major drivers of AI or artificial intelligence in the financial organizations. Further evolving into cognitive process automation, where AI systems can perform even more complex automation processes. So, and Validus is actually banking a lot more on this as we go along. It will be surprising to know that almost 1/3 of all the fintech that are operating in ASEAN, who are no more a startup but who have reached a certain level of growth,
Yes.
use internally developed AI in some shape or form.
Okay.
Right? Some would be very, very advanced, but some have already started. So there would be some amount of automation that most of the fintechs are already working on.
Okay. Chong, did you want to add on?
Yeah, I think that AI is an important part of fintech going forward because of more and more you will have more data. And then in order to have utilize the data, you must have some sort of working of the algorithm or some sort of intelligence so you can identify the fraud, but at the same time to process your transaction faster and more skilled. I think that with the development of the country for Vietnam, not with Validus, but in terms of telecommunication, insurance, banking, data will pile up. And we cannot just restructure the data in order to understand it. We need fintech company to implement AI in order to create tons of data and come out with business intelligence for decision makers inside the organization or tap into the larger economy, which will streamline the process, implement more privacy, also to be more efficient. So AI definitely an area we look into, and we want to find more companies to invest in.
So when it comes to in terms of data, whether it's AI, at the end of the day, in your opinion, do you think that fintech companies will actually end up holding a lot more data than what banks and financial institutions hold right now? Because if fintech is such a horizontal function that integrates across so many sectors, it's in a way very comparable to telco. Everybody is holding a phone and things like that. So the banking system actually is not as horizontal as fintech. So at the end of the day, how strong do you think fintech will really be when it comes to the ownership of massive big data that it creates all these new values for business prediction, things like that?
I think fintech company is just a tool, and it needs to be tapped into an ecosystem. Take an example, company in Vietnam like Momo or VNPay. So even though you only have the traditional bank, and Momo and VNPay will provide the service as an intermediary in order to serve the underbanked or unbanked people. Regulations will play an important role here, because if you want to capture data, you must have some sort of compliance. And with the without the sandbox or without a legal framework, it will be difficult to say if fintech company can leverage or can capture the data, it can sit on it by itself. We can go the bigger picture of Facebook, for example. Facebook wants to implement Libra and try to integrated with the other monetary. But at the end of the day, you have to go through the official legal process and systems. So I think that it played an important role in short, but and then it has to work in harmony with other industry. It will serve the whole economy rather than dominate and play its independent role.
Okay.
I agree with Anshung. I think it's a time of collaborating more than just competing, because the more you collaborate, the more you are able to access data from various sources. It is no more about just the financial data. It is no more about just the transactional data. It is also about behavioral data. It is also about social data. So as we go along, all these kind of different data sets is going to be extremely important. Where we are looking at any individual, be it giving him money, be it e-wallets. So in totality, if you have to look at, it is not just the data that is available today, but the kind of different alternate data sources we can tap into. It's going to be a very, very crucial aspect as we go along.
Yeah, it's good that you point out about, the integration and the consolidation, because this is something that, banks have been very worried for a long time since fintech started disrupting. And actually many of the banking directors and CEOs have already acknowledged that it's more likely going to be a consolidation of the industry as opposed to a competition of that. But in view right now, in view of COVID, right? We suddenly see that the banking business has also been, greatly impacted, and they're relying a lot on fintech assisted or fintech equipped online capabilities to really move the financial services forward. So what is your view on the impact of COVID with regards to fintech in Vietnam? And do you think, because of COVID, the fintech industry is actually better equipped to adapt to the changes caused by this pandemic?
Yeah, I think it's too early for the fintech sector, if you will, in Vietnam, given the stage of the development we are in. But given the current uncertainty, that is placed on businesses everywhere under economic duress, and fintechs are no exceptions, right? Given whether you are big or small in whatever shape or form you are today. But given that fintechs has the agility and the innovations needed to rapidly create and deliver new solutions, I think quite a few fintechs are well positioned not only to survive this crisis, but also to contribute to the industry and the society in meaningful ways once the crisis is behind us. So I think it is, I would say that adversity is inspiring creativity as we go along, because in every adversity you will find some opportunity where you can actually excel and which can benefit the market as we keep progressing.
I have questions for Squarup. Do you see the number of requests increase during the COVID time compared to the pre-COVID?
Yes and no. I mean, I would rather have a question where saying that, would you be lending to everyone who is applying for loan today?
Okay, so that's why I just want to add on that pre-COVID, I think it's very difficult for the startup, the fintech to enter the market. They're veteran banking, they always try to plug, and they've been there, they have resources, they have a lot of compliance regulations, so fintech have to overcome in order to work with them. But this is about time where fintech have lots of chances to work with all of the veteran, especially with bank. I see that the trend in Vietnam that all of the banks now, starting from the bigger one like Vietnam Bank to Agri Bank, they go out and they look for more help, for more support for fintech industry, from the digital ID to the how to engage the end users. There will be more requests from end users for consumer to banks and how they can assess them, or how they can onboard them, or how they can provide financial service. Also for the stock trading, for example, now I see more requests and more people asking because they have more time. They can try the new experience. They can access to things they never thought of it before. That's why it's a very good chance for fintech company to provide service and to kind of proposal or any presentation to the veteran in order to extend the ecosystem or how to add value into the current existing ecosystem of the veteran and to help them to develop.
Okay.
So I think this is a very good chance for FinTech.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that, Anshum. To your question earlier, whether you have more clients coming in, I think this COVID has given a lot more visibility to the fintechs, which was not available earlier because, the SMEs were not aware of this alternate financing option. It was always the banks or the finance companies. But
Right.
given the credit and the tight policies of the banks and NBFCs and their requirements of funds, they have started looking out for alternate sources where they can actually get money to run their businesses.
But
Right. So to that extent, yeah.
Right, yeah. But has COVID actually changed the way that you have operated, your regular, I wouldn't say models, but has it somehow, we know that it affects, the consumer and how they are approaching alternative financing. But as a company, do you find that you have had to make some kind of adaptation or changes just to follow the herd that's moving?
Not really. See, as I mentioned earlier, there is always an opportunity in any adversity, right? We have seen that not all the businesses who are credit hungry are bad companies. They are companies where they do not have collaterals, but they have a good business model. They have a good clientele. But 98% of the bank loans are collateralized. And because they do not have, if somebody is in the service industry or an agri-food industry, they do not have the collaterals. Somebody is in shrimp farming, he might not have that much collateral, right? But that doesn't mean that the business model is bad. So we are getting a chance to actually, understand the businesses more closely, getting to understand the potential that we have as a business as we go along, which was probably not what we would have thought earlier. But I think this COVID has introduced us as well to a lot more businesses, which can actually turn out to be a good source of, good source of business for us as well.
That's good. That's good to know. Now, before I kind of wrap up with the last question about, fintech security and compliance, I just wanted to let the audience know that if you do have any questions for the panelists, you can actually type your questions in our Q&A box, and we'll try to answer, where it's deemed fit. And so we wrap up in probably in about another 15 minutes or so. But you are welcome now to kind of post your questions in the open question and answer. So while our audience is actually doing that, I'm just going to go back to the panelists for just a wrap up question in general, because we covered quite a lot today from, opportunities, operations and outlook. Now, and we also touched a little bit about sandbox and regulations, but those policies aside, do you have any insights to share when it comes to fintech security? That requires self-governance from companies as opposed to governance by the nation. How can people feel safe putting in their data, doing transactions? What kind of trend do you see that companies are taking on now to really also kind of push forth with fintech security or regtech, regulation technology?
If you ask me, I'll talk about Validus. What we do is we have a process of getting the best practices we've got in different countries. We are at different stage of business in every country, and we know that there might be some amount of hesitance in terms of the acceptance of who we are in the country because we are pretty new. They don't understand our business model. There is always a risk attached to a new startup that comes in. But we have made sure that we collate all the best practices. When we started here, we probably did much more than what an advanced company would be doing here in terms of your compliance, in terms of complying with the regulatory requirement that might come tomorrow, based on our experience in the region. We also reach out to our clients and just to update them in terms of what we are doing, so that they get a level of comfort in our business model. We are able to display that as and when. We have any business opportunities or business deals that come along. So we make sure that we are very transparent. We are making sure that we are conservative in today's time because we are just starting off, and we are following all the best practices in the region, what we have learned over the period of last 5 years, in Validus.
Okay. Chong, would you have any thoughts about because investing in technology and fintech security is something that's of concern and big as well.
Yeah. I think that is our approach when we make decision to invest in Validus and bring it to Vietnam. So before we start, we always want to confer with the regulator. We'll talk to SBV, State Bank of Vietnam, or the local authority to tell them what we're going to do and to ask them if is any potential of violation in terms of regulation. If they say, if we have the positive feedback, they will proceed. But at the same time, we keep them updated on the progress. And when we done something, or after we launch a campaign, we come back and we report it to them to tell them the progress or the status or the result. And again, we start that cycle again and again. We keep a regular contact with them to ensure that we are in line with the regulation and we do the right thing. That's applies to all of our fintech-related investment in Vietnam. So besides Validus, we also invested in other companies which will help bank to modernize their process from capturing customer into leading them into the end journey by finalize a payment. The company called it Digital is very specialized in facial recognition and implement the face pay, and then it will link it to your bank account. So all of these things are new in Vietnam. That's why we are very cautious. We conservative, but we also try the new initiative by telling the authority, but we also want to implement it at a smaller scale. We call it closed loop to make sure it works. And we have the regular report, and then we enlarge the scale to implement it slowly.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we have some questions from the floor. So it's open for panelists. And we have one that asks us about what opportunities do you see for Singapore companies to collaborate with fintech companies in Vietnam? And I guess it can also be broadened, what opportunities do you see for overseas companies to collaborate with fintech companies in Vietnam? Just wondering.
I think that's the answer is very clear for the case of Validus. So we see that Singapore technology is ahead of Vietnam. But Vietnam has 100 million population with a high adoption rate of internet and the new tech. So it's a very good launching pad or the testing ground for the product. So I think companies in Vietnam also looking for the greater exposure for the next round of funding in terms of regional investors. So I think that will be the good match for technology company, especially fintech, to look into Vietnam, either to expand the market or to find local partner, to create the biggest scale company.
Great. Okay. And Saurabh, there's actually a question for you as well. In doing business in Vietnam, can you share your key learnings so far? This is asked by the floor. Do you have any golden words you want to share with us? Some of your key learnings?
I think, there is a word called Glocal, and I'll just elaborate on that. You can have global thinking, but you have to have a local mind to operate in this market. You might have the best of things you would have experienced and done in other markets, but Vietnam being slightly different. I think we have to be rooted to the ground to understand how things actually work. We have been very clear from day one in this place that yes, we will use the technology, but there are certain aspects where that requires an additional cover in terms of risk assessment. So we have made sure we are covering that. Our learning again here is not to rely 100% on the data what you get here, because it can be slightly tricky as people who have worked or operate in Vietnam would know. So we use a few other sources to ensure that we validate, we get the data, and we take the right decision. Again, we have to customize our products which are required in the market, rather than just taking a cut paste of any country and pasting it here, because the product may or may not fly in this country, right? So you have to understand the local market and you have to quickly adapt to the requirements that might arise tomorrow. And you have to have a very, very agile process, technology, and adoption rate in terms of changes that might be required, for us to do as a business.
Okay. And for Chuang, also a question from the floor. What are your key takeaways for startups looking to expand in Vietnam?
I think the main thing I want to say that Vietnam is developing, and there's no dominator down here. The country is growing fast and expect a lot of changes. So any opportunity can be a dominator. You see you see the unicorns coming from Malaysia, come from Indonesia. You never heard anything come from Vietnam yet. You may heard about Vietnam Games, VNPay, but it's not there yet. So any chance will can have the big opportunity can dominate the Vietnam. Vietnam is open. It's kind of untouched territory at the moment. This is very attractive market. So we would like to open the opportunity. We want to work with all of the new entrepreneur want to come down here, and if possible, just share with us the opportunity, and that we are. We will look for the right partner in order to launch a business with each other.
So can we, before we kind of wrap up, what are some ways that, what are some things you look for when you want to find partners, or when partners, potential partners reach out to you and they say, hey, I really want to kind of get into the Vietnamese market. And they have all, their fantastic pitches and corporate decks, but what is the process like, say, whether it's for Vietnam Capital or for investors in Vietnam in general? And
Okay, so
what do you really look for in a partner?
Sure. Just for your information, that Vietnam Capital Venture, we do have office in Singapore, office in Suntec City. In order to look for the partnership or for the investment, as I mentioned before, there's three main things we look into. First, we want to look into the team with a great vision. The teams come from the industry, so they will know which lever they can pull in order to sail through the difficult time. The team with a lot of commitment, who cannot treat the failure, or it will be unhumiliating to talk about failure. So that's about the team. And then we discuss about the markets, the total addressable market. If the market is large enough, to us, anything less than 100 million USD market size is small for us, because we focus our investment from pre-Series A to post-Series A and maybe early B. So we want to see some sort of sizable market. And last but not least, we look into the product. The product must be defensible. So if the company have the early traction that someone is willing to pay for its product, is a very good signal to say that the product may be successful in the future, but the product must be able to differentiate itself from other. Because when you have early success, competitor will come in, and if you cannot defend, if you cannot raise the bar, and actually you create the problem for yourself, because competitor come, you fail. The advantage of the early mover maybe also have the arrow at your back. So again, that's it. The three things we really focus on for the first discussion, of course, and then we expand into the other more detailed criteria or requirements when we discuss for the partnership. For the Vietnam Capital Venture side, we in Vietnam for more than 20 years, and we tap into the Vietnam Capital platform, which is managing about 3.3 billion USD right now. So actually, we can open doors, we can form a partnership, we also can have venture build, everything in order to create the larger economy. So that's the value we bring to the table, not only the money, but also for the network, relationship, operational experience and so on.
Okay. Thanks for sharing. There's actually one more final question. I think that we'll take that as the last question for today from the floor. just now we talked about, COVID and how it's impacted. Now, do you have any outlooks post-COVID? Do you think things will change, once the borders open up and people can actually do more face-to-face and, kind of pick up their cash from different places? Do you think the outlook for fintech industry, including SME lending, will change? And if so, how's that going to be like? Or is it actually going to be better because everyone's just so used now to norms that have been developed?
I think if you ask me, this COVID has been a great lesson. We will. It's a great learning for us to, go back to the basics of lending, is to make sure that you have a very, very strong risk management and a strong portfolio. It's very easy to, get straight away and start growing, I would say, unnaturally. But one business cycle like a COVID hits you, your entire business model can just tank. So I think that's a great learning that has come to us, saying that we have to stick to our guns. We have to be very focused in terms of our risk management. We have to ensure that we have the ability to change, because not everything what we did pre-COVID is going to exist post-COVID. So it is not just the market that is changed, it is also about how flexible you are in terms of accepting those changes and making changes to your internal processes and your assessment as we go along. Because things are definitely not going to be the same the way it were pre-COVID.
Okay.
From the investor point of view, I think that there will be no anything post-COVID, because I think starting from now on, we will look into more a sustainable business. In the sense that company must be able to predict the future, be more flexible. They can also control of their supply chain and look into the very strong internal process. We may change our investment thesis a bit, to find the more sustainable business, even though in the normal situation. So we think that the investment from outside, we will still very pro risk because we VC, but we are looking for a more sustainability. We're looking for a more risk management and stronger internal process with a very efficient way of running and managing the operation and finance.
Okay, well, so I think we'll just take, there's still one more last question that just popped in, so we'll just take it as well before I hand it over to our host from Spectrum, and this actually is for Saurabh. And maybe you want to explain a little more what is Validus plans in Vietnam moving forward?
If you ask me, we are here to build a very sustainable, scalable model, a scalable business. We have a very clear roadmap in terms of what we want to do. We are not here just to lend and make money. We are also here to contribute to the general economy as well, be it in terms of helping the unbanked SMEs, be it in terms of generating employment by way of lending to SMEs and growing their business, being true to ourselves in terms of having a very, very strong risk management framework. We want to make sure that we are fully compliant. We want to make sure that we are growing as we have done in other countries, and eventually we probably want to be at the same stage as where we are in Singapore, that is being the #1 SME lending player in Vietnam.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Saurabh and Chon, for this very dynamic panel session. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it. I learned so much, and it's so great to hear your diverse views on that. So basically, we wanted to thank Spectrum for organizing this webinar. And we know that even though it's focused on Vietnam, it's actually open globally. So we've had some really good audience and questions as well. So I'll hand this session over to Sophia. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Trung. Thank you, Saurabh. Thank you so much for the insightful session. So hopefully our audience, you have taken back some new information and insights into today's webinar. So thank you again, Vina Capital Ventures, Validus Vietnam, FinTech Academy in partnership with Healthcare FinTech Alliance. For audience, I'll see you in October for future webinars. And also, please fill up the survey form once you exit from this webinar. So that's it for today. I wrap up saying stay well, keep safe, and see you in October. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you
Have a
very
good
much.
night.
Thanks, Anshul.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.